Hi, it's Chris Watkin here with Jonathan Harris and Richard Rawlings from Lead Hub. Gentlemen, why do estate agents dread prospecting? Talk to me.
Big question. I think prospecting is one of those forms of marketing that, unless done consistently and repetitively, is something that just doesn't work. So I think if it's been done incorrectly, it probably shows the worst possible return on investment of any form of marketing. But actually, as soon as that's flipped on its head and done correctly, it does work. So going back to the initial question, it's a time-consuming thing to do. Prospecting takes up a lot of time. It takes up a lot of resource. And actually, if those two things are combined with a supposed lack of return, then it can be
Let's bring it back. Do you think it's ethical?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I think it's deeper than that. I think the British have a fear of prospecting because you've got the fear of rejection, because you know if you go door knocking or something, you're going to be thrown out. You're going to be said no. But those people who go door knocking, every 7 doors they knock, one opens. That's good, and that's good business. So I think before we get on to the ethical issue, I think a lot of people in agency are afraid of prospecting. They're afraid of even picking up the phone, just like they're afraid of closing, because it asks for a degree of commitment, which makes them feel perhaps more salesy than they would like to be, because how estate agents are portrayed, they're always trying to wind that back, and they don't want to be seen to be too salesy. But in this business, you do need to ask for business, and prospecting, particularly the type of prospecting we're looking at, in other words, grabbing that low-hanging fruit that's already on the market, is essential.
Do you think this is an estate agency problem or just people in business problem?
I only know estate agency. I'm a estate agency through and through. I wish I had more colour to my soul.
I can't think of many industries, though, that you'd have that potential for it, especially with this, let's call it secondhand prospecting, the prospecting of vendors who've already committed to agency. A car salesman, perhaps, in the first 2 months of somebody having bought a BMW, is probably not looking to prospect them to switch to Mercedes, although they might be doing a bit of prospecting. There's a very real possibility of a switch when you are going out to these people. So again, we are agency, but I can't see it being as
it's actually interesting when you look at other industries. I mean, the number of things you get through your door from utilities, insurance companies and things, even exhaust companies getting you to switch your business, and it's perfectly legitimate, not unethical. It's saying, here we are, why don't you use our service? It's just called marketing. And if you can specifically aim to the people that have a need at the moment, like if I'm selling exhausts and I know that car needs a new exhaust, that's the person I want to switch.
Because let's be frank, we're in a business where actually people advertise the fact that their house has been on the market too long, and they need someone to sell their houses. Let's bring it back. Do you think it's estate agents have got an issue with the type of personality most estate agents are? I mean, we were talking when you picked me up in the limo, Richard, from the train station, and we were talking about the type of personality that is attracted to be an estate agent. I'm a big fan of the disc profiling, and most estate agents are what we call eyes, which is the influencers, which are people as opposed to
they're more
process
colourful,
people.
They're more personality driven, as is absolutely right, because people instruct people. Ultimately,
people buy from right. And that type of personality wants to be loved and fears rejection. And interestingly, we were talking about someone that we love to bits, both of us, Perry Power. And he actually employs a person with a different personality type, whose job it is just to pick up the phone and talk to people.
A steady type,
very much so.
Absolutely.
But those are the people that don't tend to be attracted to a estate agency.
There's often a mismatch, particularly if you're putting the onus on your listers to also go out and get the business. There's a division.
They don't exist, Richard.
The two skills.
I've been talking to a few people recently who are wanting to set up hubs, associate model, self-employed model, and they're saying that they're wanting valuers who self-generate. And to be honest with you, I can count on that hand. Probably I can count on those two fingers the number of valuers I know, employed valuers who can self-generate. They're like, what's it called, unicorns.
It does have to be a systematic process within the strategy of your estate agency business. And some agents who do prospect or pick up the phone or do canvassing, they do it when there's nothing else to do or when they're desperate for business, instead of it being an underlying core strategy for the marketing of the business. Do
you think it needs to be automated?
Up to a point, and that's what we do at Lead Hub. But ultimately it has to be done one way or another. The automating process of it means that the tiresome stuff of actually discovering the actual addresses of properties for sale.
Pain at the backside.
That's you don't need a trained estate agent to do that. If you can automate that, that frees up the time for the agent to use their personality skills to go out and get the business, either through letter first off and then picking up the business thereafter.
Yeah, but the problem with prospecting is that people don't measure, or you don't actually know where the business comes from. Almost,
I think
direct or indirect.
If I can jump on that, I think that's becoming easier to measure. I think historically it would have been a send out 20,000 leaflets and hope for a return, and that something came back. But I think the more intelligently people work those leads, the better. So, for example, at Lead Hub, we'll give access to an address, a full address in the market, but also give agents the option to upload past valuation details. So actually, let's say a home that they valued 6 months ago has now reappeared with the second agent. They can then tag that and monitor it and see that home 6 weeks later perhaps has a price drop, and it's about how they react and engage that data. So it's as much about being responsible for your leads as being automated, being consistent, being
I think there's a distinction also, sorry Chris, between what I call canvassing and prospecting. So canvassing is sending out tens of thousands maybe consistently of interesting relevant stuff that may well engage with somebody who's just about to come on the market. When we talk of prospecting, certainly in our world, we talk about approaching those people who are already on the market, and actually, Do
you think they're the lower hanging fruit?
Absolutely,
because it's all about the numbers. Do you drop 20,000 leaflets on 20,000 households, or do you put your time and effort hitting the other agents' properties?
Ideally, you do both.
It's a combination.
The quickest fix is knowing which properties are on the market. It was interesting. I just did a little snapshot in a particular postcode through Lead Hub yesterday, just as a snapshot locally, and 45% of the stock was over 3 months old, and those people are frustrated. They've chosen the wrong agent. Right, unwittingly or not, they're with the wrong agent, and 61% of those properties in the snapshot are people who'd actually switched agents. So I'm sorry, they'd had a price reduction. When they switched agents, 61% also came with a price reduction, proving what we've always known, that agents often go in, the easiest way to get the instruction is to give a flattering price.
Low fee, high value.
Low fee, high value, sticks on the market. The agent then, the seller gets frustrated with the agent, and that seller then switches to another agent, and it comes with a price reduction 61% of the time, and it also probably comes with an increase in fee as well. The first agent let them down, and that's where the ethics of prospecting I don't have a problem with at all. They went to the wrong agent.
Well, I'd make you figures. I think it was either Rightmove or Zoopla that said 60% of properties sell with the second agent. And in this housing market, there's no excuse to go picking over other agents' properties. I mean, what about the consistency? Can you drop too many leaflets? Can you drop too little?
I think you can certainly drop too little. I think they said that the key, if you refer to Richard Bunching article just from this morning, at least 6 points of contact with somebody for them to start taking notice. But that 6 have to be relatively well bunched, so they can't be one every sort of 3 months, because people do lose interest in it, and it
people won't
filters
remember,
out
will
their
they?
psyche.
Yeah, so if people, for example, have seen a newsletter with proper news, not just pictures of properties, but something interesting that's come through the door associated with that agent. And I'm a great believer in hard copy through the door. You can't avoid it. There's a lot of noise in the digital space, but if it comes through your letterbox on its way to the bin, it might just get read.
Yes. When it comes down to content, which I'm going to bring up in a second.
So that's their first hit. The second hit might be that they've seen something on social media. The third hit, somebody mentioned in a referral maybe, or a review, and then they get a letter through their door. This is what bunching is. Altogether, these things are starting to brainwash.
Interestingly, you say that it isn't just all down one avenue of, one medium of communication.
It can be, but no.
So, digital versus paper versus email versus whatever. Is there a good or bad?
I don't think it's a competition. I think one supports the other.
I think so, and I'm always trying to encourage my clients to bridge that gap between analog and digital. So Lead Hub, as an example, is predominantly analog. It's letters, it's hard printers, it's mailers. But actually, there's real benefit for for driving those analog customers into being digital engagers. So, for example, you have your yes people, so the people who will react, who will respond to your prospecting, and the people who just chin you off and say, I don't want anything to do with you. But then actually the biggest proportion of people is probably the maybes, the people who want to find out a little bit more about you, who want to subtly engage with you, who want to find out, and inquire. And it's those people, if you could send them from a postcard or a letter into a section of your website that has a little bit more about you, without them committing fully, I think there's an enormous opportunity
earn
there.
the right to the
business.
business.
You build from there.
Interestingly, Richard, you said that brand awareness is insufficient if it's not backed up with substance. What did you mean by that? I think, you mentioned the word content, and you said the word relevant, meaningful, timely, and respectful. What do you mean by that, and how can estate agents do better by that?
I think a lot of agents have assumed that brand awareness is everything, and that's why they've sent out mailers, and that's why even on the property newspapers or on their website, it's pictures of properties. Well, it's a bit boring. Of course agents sell properties, we know that, but why would I go to one agent as opposed to the other agent? Because all some agents have, you've got the red agent, the green agent, the blue agent, they all seem to do the same thing. So when I'm talking about relevant, meaningful, interesting content, I'm saying let's engage with the either the seller or the homeowner who may become a seller. They can
become a seller as well.
Hello,
should
seller.
they choose.
But it's got on their terms, and having the same sorts of conversations that you would be having with them if you were on their doorstep. So when you send a flyer, it's not just free valuation, no sale, no fee. Straight
Every
over
agent
the
does
head.
that, though, don't they?
It's just so old hat in my view. It's saying to the seller, here's something you might not have thought of. If you think you're selling a house, how do you tell the children you're moving? Or should I withdraw my house for the summer holiday? How do I choose an agent? Do I need an agent that does virtual tours? Or am I better to go with one that doesn't do virtual tours because they're passionate about getting people around property? All the hundreds of different topics that affect us in agency, the conversations you would have with a client, those are the types of things you need to be giving generously in your marketing. And that's where your freebies, your newsletters, your flyers, your web content, which is great for your SEO and everything else, like the sort of stuff that you do, sort of writing that you and I do.
Indeed.
It really hooks into that concept.
I mean, you said in the article that you shouldn't be timid and you should address real issues and instill confidence with a strong call to action.
Yeah. A strong call to action, because in the same way that many agents often fail to close, even though they're great people, they enjoyed the meeting, the seller likes them, but they just fail to close.
They don't funnel it down to a specific point. It's all too general.
It's too nice sometimes, because you've got to be nice, but you've got to close as well. And in the same way, your writing needs to close. It needs to have a point. And in a way, anything that you write or you send out, you mail out or whatever, I think should raise an issue and go 70% of the way towards solving that issue. If they want the rest of the answer, they call you.
Yeah, you can't give it all.
No,
can you?
so you're always, although there is a huge place for generosity, I think we can give an awful lot away. If you consistently give every month, you're sending out mailers, newsletters, flyers, social media campaigns, and it's giving your expertise and your knowledge. People will regard you as clearly.
But how can you measure this?
You know what? You can't always. Just like, how can you measure the value of a telephone in your business? You can't, but you know you need one. And serious business people use business intuition to say, is this a good idea? There will be people who come back and say, oh, I received your letter, can you call me please? Or I read your article, that was very good. That happens, but in a way that's the icing on the cake, because most of the business comes from the people that never even mentioned it, and they probably don't even know where they got it from. Like, you might buy a Miele washing machine because you've seen it on a billboard, but you don't go into the shop and say, oh, I saw that billboard.
You don't, do you?
It's just, that's the subliminal aspect of it as well. But
I think that goes back to your bunching point. So whilst you may want to say, right, I subscribe to this service, I pay X for this service, so therefore I want to see X return on that service, and maybe that it was that service combined with that approach.
It's that holistic thing we talked about at the start.
It's all about everything working together.
But then the grabbing, the closing, if you like, is sending a seller who you know is on the market and frustrated straight to them, knowing they've been on the market for 5 weeks or 8 weeks, sending them a 5-week letter, or seeing they've just had a price reduction.
Even going as far as saying, I've noticed your house has been on the market 8 weeks.
As long as it's respectfully done.
I think so. And again, I'm a big believer in not using prospecting as an opportunity to slam their current agent.
Correct.
It's about being empathetic. I was on the market a few months ago, and actually the first few weeks of that were dreadful. And actually, had I had an agent approach me speaking my language, so promising feedback within a few hours, and actually having accompanied view, all those sort of things, I would have responded so much better to that than an approach saying your agent is an arse, give us your business. I don't think that works. So empathy for me is an enormous aspect of
raise questions and challenge them as well, and saying, for example, has the number of viewings decreased since you put your house on the market?
And that's quite subtle, though. So that's putting the onus and the question to their mind. So if they do then feel prompted to say, actually, I haven't seen them in a week, then that feels as though it's a question that they own, and therefore they can act on. And
one final point on this: what about complaints and negativity from getting these letters?
Goes with the territory. But it's interesting, the number of agents who they get a complaint, someone says, how did you know my house was on the market or whatever, and so often you can convert a complaint to
because they sit on the extremes. Often the most critical people can be switched to being your biggest advocates. It's the people who are the that sit in the middle, who occupy that middle space, that a bit indifferent. You don't want indifference. You want either people to.
I don't mind pissing off a few people as long as everybody.
A bit like Marmite, If you try and get the vanilla, no one likes it.
Yeah, no, indeed.
Jonathan, Richard, what I'd like to do is in the next few videos is go through these in a little bit more detail. Is that okay?
Yeah, for sure.
Excellent. Thank you.
Good stuff.